One midnight train is about to prove nightmares come with timetables, because the bandaged young man knows by a tunnel begins his nightmare. While a silver-haired passenger mistakes his camera for shameless flirting, he ignores her teasing and calmly continues counting down, certain something disastrous will strike this final train. Though nearby workers ridicule his warning as superstitious nonsense, and a muscular passenger calls him a cowardly liar, while two women urge him to delete the recording, before a suited commuter threatens to call the police. Yet the young man keeps counting. 3, 2, leaving the amused passengers convinced he is performing for attention. As the workers mock his warning with impressive survival instincts, and the commuter finally snaps at his stubborn countdown. Right when the young man reaches 1, the train violently lurches, throwing passengers from their seats, and he warns them monsters have arrived exactly on schedule, turning their mockery into frightened questions about his impossible prediction. Although the muscular skeptic still insists this must be coincidence until the train grinds to a halt and bodies hit the floor. Then darkness swallows the carriage as everyone reaches for a flashlight. One beam catches the silver-haired woman's terrified expression, and she demands answers from the suspiciously calm stranger. But he silences her and tells everyone to listen, as frantic scratching crawls across the dark carriage, prompting one worker to pray while the others freeze. Yet the young man calmly identifies the sound as insects, just before enormous legs shatter the train window, and a swarm of giant locusts blankets the carriage outside, leaving the masked student staring at a nightmare with wings, while the creatures crowd every window and select their prey. The young man warns the student she is their target, forcing yesterday's skeptics to beg him for survival instructions. So he orders everyone toward the very front car, and the terrified group races after their suddenly credible guide, though the silver-haired woman loses a heel mid-sprint, then abandons both shoes because priorities finally found her, while giant locusts continue circling the stranded train and the bandaged leader reaches the driver's cabin first. Raising an emergency hammer, he orders everyone to jump outside, but the muscular man fears broken glass will invite monsters in, yet their guide smashes it, insisting this escape always works, while the women wonder how often he has lived this scene, before he kicks a wider opening through the remaining glass, and directs everyone down the tunnel ahead, where grateful survivors promise free workouts and even renovations, then scramble outside before those generous offers become memorials. Before the blue-haired woman leaves, he stops her, earning a wary look from someone absent in his dreams, so he warns her to lead everyone toward the next station, and she reluctantly agrees to gather them on its platform. Once alone, he watches the evacuees vanish into the tunnel, as giant locusts flood through the broken windshield behind him, revealing level 1 markers across the entire ravenous swarm, exactly the enemies whose dream version strengthened his body, so he charges forward to test whether reality shares those rules. Armed with dozens of completed dream runs and perfect knowledge, his first kill grants experience while preserving level 99, confirming every locust is now walking progression material, and the young man tears through them with his emergency hammer, named Chin Yu, a Manhua artist now living his wildest plot, while every fallen locust feeds him another experience point, proving the dream system has crossed into waking life, and his supposedly ordinary world has become something extraordinary. Chin Yu handles the mutant swarm with effortless confidence, since this dungeon has trapped him countless times during sleep, after recurring dreams placed him before endless monster-filled screens. At first, he treated the chaos as free Manhua material, until monsters slaughtered his dream family while he watched helplessly. Then Chin Yu discovered he could enter those floating screens, turning passive nightmares into battlegrounds he could physically invade. From then on, he vowed none of those monsters would survive, fighting every night, through dungeons from level 1 upward, even though cleared screens reset and returned the next night, while each victory permanently strengthened his body and level, revealing repeatable dungeons offering infinite strategy and growth, with Chin Yu starring as their self-appointed protagonist, and this subway dungeon becoming his easiest, most farmed challenge. Its timing, enemies, and rewards now matched the dream perfectly, except his level 99 physique followed him into reality, making level 1 locusts little more than noisy experience confetti. With monsters now real, Chin claims saving this world as protagonist duty, and crushes the final locust for threatening his property. Meanwhile, the survivors follow Chin's route through the dark tunnel, but the silver-haired woman questions abandoning their handsome rescuer, leaving everyone quietly measuring gratitude against basic self-preservation until the older worker admits Chin risked everything for strangers, and even former skeptics recognize his courage and reconsider retreating. Just then, the blue-haired woman spots light ahead, revealing Baihe's station and the promise of staff, signals, and safety, yet she immediately challenges anyone willing to abandon Chin, splitting the survivors between the safer platform and darker tracks. The silver-haired woman proposes returning because they outnumber mere bugs, and 3 men rally around tools, confidence, and delayed bravery, while the masked student chooses dinner with her mother over heroics, so the silver-haired woman stays behind to escort her toward help. Before the rescue party moves, the blue-haired woman senses something approaching, and an impossibly tall silhouette emerges from the tunnel, revealing a 2-meter mutant mantis built like concentrated bad news, sending the group running despite one worker's improvised weapon plan until a far faster figure suddenly crashes into the mantis. As the creature catches them, the survivors expect immediate disaster, and the terrified student can only plead for her life, before Chin's strike slices across the monster in one flash, splashing the silver-haired woman with sticky green fluid but no injuries. Their self-declared savior lands between the group and Mantis, promising to protect everyone exactly as he did before, then orders the civilians behind him while he fights alone. Even the workers realize Chin could have demolished them earlier, while the blue-haired woman senses he differs from ordinary people. Unknown to most, Planetary Will selects spiritually powerful individuals, awakening extraordinary abilities within those favored human vessels whom society commonly recognizes as rare geniuses. Together, 13 such geniuses accelerate planetary evolution and vitality, but Chin resembles someone chosen by a darker will, because light and shadow always arrive as an inconvenient package, and the Dark Star will creates chaos purely for amusement. It chooses transcendent beings who can stage spectacular disasters, granting enormous power while twisting their deepest desires, yet Chin's genuine protection leaves the blue-haired woman questioning that theory. Ahead, the injured level 3 Broadaxe Mantis retains 98% health, and Chin realizes real monsters can finally drop tangible items, equipment capable of boosting him against whatever disaster comes next. Still, one deviation from his dreams could become unpredictably lethal, so he deliberately draws the mantis away, preventing remembered side quest casualties. Chin even prolongs combat to test folklore about better drops, because apparently the apocalypse also respects suspicious gaming superstitions, while he effortlessly dodges another sweeping blade, leaving the workers debating Olympic training and special forces backgrounds. The masked student notices Chin is intentionally luring it away, and the silver-haired woman mistakes his strategy for noble sacrifice. Ashamed, the muscular man leads several survivors back to help, but an ear-piercing impact stops their improvised rescue charge, as Chin repeatedly stabs the mantis while cheerfully taunting it, leaving his would-be reinforcements frozen in collective disbelief, before one final blow obliterates the level 3 creature. The system confirms the kill and announces an extra reward, producing 2 grayish-white orbs containing modest E-rank items. One holds Roar of the Eastern Lion, while another contains a dagger, so Chin activates the useful Broadaxe Mantis blade first, and blue energy erupts into a vicious curved weapon. The E+ dagger grants strength, agility, and several future enhancements, while the survivors struggle to explain the mantis exploding like game data. Health bars, monster deaths, and Chin's abilities all scream video game logic, inspiring one worker's confident theory that everyone got collectively isekai'd. The blue-haired woman corrects him, claiming their original world transformed, which immediately raises questions about mortgages, farming, and very practical doom. She promises answers later, assuming they survive long enough, because locust swarms and giant mantises already prove the danger, and everyone recognizes Chin as the reason they still breathe. Yet the older worker questions why such an informed fighter helps strangers, just as Chin cheerfully summons everyone toward the station platform, so the group postpones suspicion and prioritizes surviving the dungeon. Their disgusted expressions confuse Chin, who remembers no such dream deviation, and he assumes his overwhelming power simply stunned them speechless. The blue-haired woman explains they cannot understand his selfless choices, privately wondering whether Chin represents disguised darkness or genuine light. Offended, he asks why rescued civilians are treating him like a demon, then admits meeting them thousands of times across recurring dreams. Realizing vague answers only deepen suspicion, Chin agrees to explain, and every survivor leans closer for his real reason, only for a terrified scream to interrupt Chin's explanation as a massive red-headed centipede charges along the tracks. The survivors panic because this monster dwarfs even the mantis and immediately beg their newly promoted Superman to handle it. Chin sends them beneath the platform, warning its final boss waits above, earning another desperate promise of free renovations if everyone survives. He urges the blue-haired woman to leave before combat begins, but she holds her ground and reaches toward him, forcing Chin to ask whether his answer truly matters now. Her stubbornness intrigues him because she never entered his dreams, while the system marks their centipede opponent as common E+ rank. Instead of retreating, she activates a planetary will scan on Chin, and the ability locks onto an unusual signal surrounding him. Blue light fills her eye as hidden information resolves, identifying Chin as a male dual-star consciousness influencer, chosen simultaneously by the planetary will and dark star will. Such resilient dual stars can seize opportunities and enter human history, though even exceptional examples normally reach only levels 20 through 50, becoming fearsome masters whose influence reshapes entire battlefields. Yet Chin's impossible level 99 leaves her utterly stunned. Dual-star influencers can repeatedly experience reality through their dreams, but each reset forces them through intensified psychological torment again, making every return feel like the worst imaginable pain. Reaching level 99 means Chin endured tens of millions of ordeals, enough suffering to shatter anyone, yet he remains disturbingly cheerful. Chin, meanwhile, carves through the centipede with theatrical royal confidence, then complains when its huge body drops only one item. Curious despite this stingy reward, he inspects the glowing prize, revealing E-rank storage space with 5 time frozen cubic meters, essentially an apocalypse refrigerator, perfect for stockpiling food before panic buying. Chin wonders whether dream items still enter his mental realm, so the storage crystal dissolves into his palm and the successful transfer confirms another remarkably convenient rule. The blue-haired woman immediately demands his promised explanation, surprising Chin, who expected her persistence to have limits. Her real question is how countless nightmares never drove him insane, but Chin indignantly asks whom she thinks she is addressing. He proudly declares passionate, unread, starving comic artists naturally possess titanium sanity, and she concludes that answer itself confirms his madness. Chin asks whether her certainty means she shares his dungeon dreams. She denies dreaming, though many other people apparently do, revealing Chin is only one victim of this strange phenomenon. He suspects a hidden force made their nightmares become reality, yet decides answers can wait while his overwhelming strength remains, and calmly vows he will save this transformed world himself. Her senses confirm Chin genuinely believes every heroic word, so she considers forming a mysterious contract with him now. Meanwhile, the survivors argue nervously near the station platform, until Chin and the blue-haired woman finally rejoin them. They warn that the final boss waits nearby and beg for silence, but Chin calls this the weakest dungeon he knows, assuring everyone its boss is already doomed with him present. He even asks whether they want to see the creature, and the muscular man decides one cautious peek seems harmless, while the silver-haired woman wonders what the final boss resembles, just as a colossal winged insect descends through the darkness. The system identifies it as the level 5 White Moth King, whose absurd size instantly consumes everyone's borrowed courage. The worker protests that a people-eating moth violates biology, while Chin answers with Wing Hurricane, unleashing a blue cyclone. The raging wind forces everyone to hide from razor-sharp debris, yet Chin cheerfully asks the moth to fan him harder. The White Moth King steadies itself against his hurricane, and Chin drops straight toward the enormous insect, carving through its body with his newly acquired dagger. The wounded boss still looms over Chin defiantly, but he assures it that dizziness is perfectly normal. It retaliates with poison powder, filling the station with golden dust, which Chin inhales like surprisingly pleasant aromatherapy. The survivors marvel that lethal poison somehow smells wonderful to him, making the silver-haired woman wonder who the real boss is. Even the others question whether Chin remains technically human, while the moth realizes its poison cannot affect this monster. Terror finally wins, and the boss turns to flee, only for Chin to intercept its escape along the wall. His impossible movement leaves both physics and the onlookers offended before one merciless slash tears through the moth, and its green blood streaks across Chin's calm face. The kill grants 5 extra drops of green quality, so Chin eagerly opens the glowing reward, hoping for greatness. Before leaving, he decides friendliness might calm the survivors, then smiles horribly and tells everyone they are safe. His poison-smeared face makes reassurance considerably less reassuring, though the shaken passengers still hurry home through the night. They celebrate escaping alive and hope never to meet again, while Chin tells the mysterious woman to head home too. She dryly notes that nobody has a home anymore, and Chin stops when her warning finally registers. Clearing the dungeon early has triggered a second invasion wave, news that immediately catches Chin's full attention. Pillars of light mark sealed dungeons spreading across reality, and she asks whether the true apocalypse frightens him now. Instead, Chin welcomes the world-changing event with reckless delight, then abruptly sprints away as she asks where he is going. His rented apartment became a dungeon, trapping his assistant and manuscripts, so saving the world can wait behind saving his work. The woman concludes manga artists truly are all insane, as the F-rank android apartment's dungeon activates across town. Inside, Chin's assistant Zhang Tong grips a kitchen knife, staring at the chaos and wondering what happened to reality. Hulking shapes surround Zhang Tong inside the darkened studio, and one goblin strikes before she can escape. She cannot understand why monsters suddenly infest the apartment, until recognizing them as goblins from Chin's recurring dream. His old description confirms this building became that exact dungeon, turning the story she hated hearing into a brutal warning. These goblins attack in swarms, overwhelming even strong adults, and several already charge directly toward her hiding place. Cornered upstairs, Zhang Tong considers jumping with their manuscript drive, then despairs that both she and their work would perish. The goblin pack closes in with hungry enthusiasm, while Zhang Tong desperately keeps her knife raised. She orders her panicking brain to invent something quickly, when a muscular green-haired man suddenly tackles the entire mob. One goblin turns toward Zhang Tong with almost polite menace, but Zhao Mengju challenges anything tough enough to bully women. She recognizes their wealthy assistant, landlord, and unlikely rescuer, though even Zhao quickly disappears beneath the goblin swarm. Another creature notices Zhang Tong during the beating, then raises its weapon above the fallen Zhao. Outside, Chin races toward the apartment with seconds remaining, because his dream says Zhao dies precisely 10 seconds later. The mysterious woman asks how he plans to reach them, and Chin chooses the walls without knowing whether physics agrees. He leaps upward and begins sprinting across the building, trusting level 99 strength that no weapon has truly tested. Inside, a goblin prepares to finish Zhao on schedule, but Chin crashes through the window and kicks it away. The impact scatters the goblin pack across the studio, shaking the entire apartment with his thoroughly unsubtle entrance. A surviving goblin attacks Chin from behind, only to receive a crisp kick rehearsed countless dream nights. Another goblin wisely attempts an immediate retreat, but Chin blocks its route with predatory amusement, and one brutal strike ends the escape permanently. Zhang Tong realizes her boss has secretly been a superhero, while the mysterious woman says he simply chose manga instead. Her arrival through the window makes Zhang question whether she is human, before the blood-soaked studio raises several larger questions. After a quick explanation, everyone understands the dungeon invasion. Chin declares they must kill every boss and restore reality, making Zhao compare him to a living manga protagonist. Chin immediately invites Zhao Mengzhu to become his right-hand man, and the enthusiastic pair seal their alliance with a handshake. Chin then remembers the green reward orb in his hand and asks Zhang Tong to open its randomly generated prize. The opener's luck determines how valuable that reward becomes, while Zhang Tong previously drew Chin's glorious first C-quality item. She modestly warns them that her luck is completely ordinary, then opens the orb under considerable professional pressure. It produces an E+ songstress magical girl job change item, proving their so-called godly gacha deserves every ridiculous syllable. Zhao volunteers to accept the class for humanity's protection and transforms into a sparkling purple magical girl. Zhang Tong kicks him away, insisting the costume suits nothing. Chin leaves them hidden while he hunts the final boss, though Zhang protests that neither assistant possesses combat power. A much taller shadow suddenly fills the studio doorway, revealing a massive goblin brute rather than Chin, and Zhao realizes a stronger enemy has found them. The muscular goblin swats Zhao aside with effortless force, so Zhang Tong finally accepts that survival outweighs embarrassment. She activates the class, gaining a voice weapon against darkness, while radiant magic wraps her in a glittering transformation. Zhang Tong emerges as an actual magical girl, just as the muscular goblin charges her position. Trusting manga logic, she prepares to attack through song, then commands the charging monster to stop. A brilliant soundwave blasts directly through its body, killing the level 3 muscle goblin and dropping a green orb. Zhang Tong celebrates her first victory with stunned delight before the new power leaves her nearly unconscious. She wonders how Qin survives battles far beyond this exhaustion when a violent tremor answers from elsewhere in the building. Qin faces the level 5 Fat King Goblin and its enormous sword, accepting one slash before promising a punch in return. Brilliant energy condenses around Qin's clenched fist, though the observer senses he uses only a fraction of level 99. Even that fraction launches a devastating torrent into the king, blasting the shrieking goblin helplessly toward the sky. The impact erupts above the city like a golden pillar, and the Goblin King disintegrates inside its expanding shockwave. That violent death sends a signal across the stars, reaching the distant world known as Goblin Planet. Its rulers identify Qin as their fallen godson's killer, though their leader orders everyone to remain seated, promising revenge once a transport channel opens toward Blue Star. His warriors eagerly accept the command and await invasion. Back on Earth, Qin's group celebrates with much-needed noodles while the mysterious woman inspects his painfully ordinary studio. Qin asks why she has not left yet, and she says level 99 still requires proper testing. Her power suddenly pulls Qin into an independent dimension, where returning requires striking her with his greatest strength. Qin confirms that defeating her is the only exit, then happily prepares to measure his full power. He warns the coming punch may hurt considerably, while accumulated energy begins warping her artificial dimension. She realizes a direct hit could erase even her existence, as Qin drives his glowing fist forward without hesitation. Certain annihilation seems inevitable when level 99 reaches her, but Qin redirects the strike at the last instant. His fist tears through the dimension beside her, shattering the independent space instead of its creator. Stunned, she realizes Qin never intended to hit her because he saw neither a villain nor a monster. She asks whether Qin truly considers her human, and he notes she lacks any suspicious extra eyes or mouths. Nobody across countless ages ever treated her this way, despite her wandering through the histories of entire civilizations. For the first time, the ancient being chooses a contractor, then places 2 fingers against Qin's forehead. A crystalline blue symbol forms between his eyes, binding their lives while she helps him protect the world. Qin naturally asks what these star spirits actually are, and learns they are planetary minds that eventually destroy hosts. She is Blue Star's spirit, targeted by other cosmic spirits, whose dungeon projections will slaughter humanity if left uncleared. A lifeless Blue Star would also erase her completely. While Qin finds planetary defense alarmingly exciting, she warns that each invading star spirit will grow stronger, but Qin intends to fight everyone until the bitter end. 3 months later, countless awakened humans battle dungeon monsters worldwide, and governments establish the Saviors Alliance to organize their defense. The Alliance classifies dungeons from E rank through X rank, with mysterious X rank zones consuming every powerhouse sent inside. Saviors receive matching ranks, while 13 X rank elites guard humanity, giving Qin's assistants considerable confidence in Blue Star's survival. The Alliance rapidly controls nearly every dungeon around Yuzhou City, leaving Zhao bored because no monsters remain available. Qin complains their constant fighting keeps his Manhua suspended, so Zhang Tong suggests they finally resume drawing it. One glance at Chin's account reveals a different emergency, because months without updates have left him unable to afford food. Zhang realizes her salary is therefore equally imaginary this month then demolishes Chin's argument that 3,600 is excessive. Their financial debate quickly becomes a surprisingly physical editorial meeting, until television invites unregistered saviors to receive official ranks. Higher evaluations also grant larger monthly salaries from the Alliance, sending Qin and Zhang racing toward appraisal immediately. The next day, they reach Yuzhou City's crowded Alliance headquarters, where an employee sends their group toward a lengthy queue. Zhao marvels at the assembled saviors while Qin studies them, and the trio obediently joins the distant end. Nearby thugs mock weaker applicants and harass a curvy woman, boasting that monsters could swallow small fighters in one bite. Their leader adds that the woman prefers fresher prey herself, while Qin's group endures 3 hours of bureaucratic suspense. A muscular applicant strikes the appraisal sphere with enormous force, but his E-plus result makes him accuse the machine. Officials remove the furious man and call the next applicant, bringing Zhang Tong forward with very modest expectations. Instead, the machine awards her an astonishing rank, and Zhang needs confirmation that the result is actually hers. Alliance staff immediately welcome her as a world-saving powerhouse, making Zhao determined to surpass his teammate's score. The watching thugs wonder how Zhang Tong will compare, until Zhao's appraisal displays an exceptional S- rank. Onlookers accuse the machine of rating 2 weaklings incorrectly, but officials explain it measures kills, attributes, class, and level. Zhao receives immediate VIP treatment and an alliance invitation, while the thugs refuse to believe an S rank appeared. Qin wonders whether his own appraisal will exceed both assistants, and Zhao loudly predicts at least an S rank for him. Qin places his hand upon the glowing instrument as the female thug eagerly anticipates his hidden skills. Instead of a rank, alarms suddenly scream throughout the hall, leaving technicians unable to understand the spreading malfunction. The supposedly indestructible device crashes for the first time, and Qin nervously suspects level 99 caused the failure. Once restored, the machine shows no result at all, making Qin fear the Alliance will charge him for repairs. A technician requests another test when Wu Yan arrives, introduced as Yuzhou City's only current S-rank savior. Zhao notices everyone worshipping the newcomer's oppressive aura, and learns Wu Yan cleared 5 C-rank dungeons alone. Zhang asks whether that feat alone guarantees S-rank, but an Alliance scientist corrects her assumption, explaining 1 A-rank and 5 B-ranks can clear C-rank, whereas Wu Yan repeatedly completed those dungeons entirely alone. Zhao claims Qin has cleared similar dungeons at least 20 times, making the scientist wonder about this unimpressive-looking boss. Wu Yan grants Qin another appraisal despite standard one-test rules, and Qin warns that his bank cannot reimburse another machine. Even X-rank saviors never caused such an unprecedented malfunction, so Wu Yan considers whether Qin surpasses X-rank entirely. Qin touches the appraisal sphere for a second attempt, but the instrument immediately fails once again. The crowd concludes Qin cannot even reach E- rank, while he simply celebrates avoiding an expensive repair bill. Wu Yan dismisses the possibility of another X-rank savior appearing casually, but Qin fumes that both assistants registered while he remained rankless. That result feels absurd when he can defeat them together, until an Alliance employee reminds him that helping others defines heroes. Qin finds her strangely familiar despite the spectacularly awkward phrasing, and her immediate disgust confirms romance has politely left the building. The straightforward employee introduces herself as Zhao Ye, a name Qin cannot place despite recognizing her face. Zhao and Zhang return, interrupting his attempt to remember, while Zhao casually calls their enormous salaries pocket change. Zhang describes generous pay, free meals, and lucrative dungeon bonuses, whereas Zhao considers his 6-figure base salary almost insulting. Qin and Zhang detect capitalism and jokingly plot against him when a new golden dungeon pillar erupts across the city. Residents stare as the blazing column engulfs an apartment complex, and a towering flame-haired invader emerges from the portal. He confirms this is the world his brother marked, then mistakes nearby basketball players for harmless entertainment. The invader demands to know whether basketball is Earth's game, but dismisses the sport as utterly boring, before blasting the court apart with casual violence. Terrified families flee while the monster advances through the flames, and one mother desperately contacts the Savior's Alliance. Dispatch identifies a yellow D-rank pillar and sends Delivery Hero, while Zhao Yu refuses to abandon children trapped nearby. She lacks powers, yet joined the Alliance specifically to save people and charges through the fire toward a fallen child. The invader watches, wondering what human children taste like, then brings his enormous foot down upon them, only for Zhao Ye to snatch the child away. She shields him and narrowly slips beyond the monster's reach, but the invader declares bravery useless without sufficient power. A flaming projectile explodes beside the fleeing pair, throwing Zhao Ye down while she protects the child. Losing his appetite, the monster chooses to burn everyone instead, and summons an enormous fireball above his hand. Zhao Ye decides this may be her only heroic chance, when a delivery scooter suddenly crashes through the flames. The unexpected intervention leaves Yao Xue staring in disbelief, as the helmeted savior assures her that help arrived. He is Delivery Hero, a registered B-rank savior, and the invader welcomes this more interesting human opponent. Delivery Hero opens with a spectacular flying kick, while distant laughter echoes from Qin's apartment, where his team relaxes with food and television. Qin argues that fighting monsters matters more than model behavior, and appreciates Zhang Tong funding their barbecue and movie night. Something on the broadcast suddenly catches Qin's attention because the endangered Zhao Ye appeared in his dream dungeon, finally restoring both her name and ominous significance. Qin decides to enter Zhao Ye's dungeon dream that very night, then falls asleep with his usual alarming confidence. A sudden premonition disturbs his brief rest, and Qin wakes to check the current time. The clock shows exactly when Zhao Yue's dungeon should appear, recalling how her dream self entrusted everything to fate. Qin abandons sleep and races to save her immediately, dropping from a rooftop near the burning complex, before launching himself toward the battle at full speed. The flame-haired invader already holds Delivery Hero defeated, revealing power closer to C rank than reported D rank. Qin accelerates through the city far beyond ordinary traffic, determined that no harm will reach Zhao Ye. Her earlier water means little compared with her true character, because every dream showed her sacrificing herself for strangers. Qin refuses to let such courage die beneath a monster, while Delivery Hero burns helplessly in the invader's grasp. The monster dismisses his opponent as merely somewhat interesting, then hurls the broken savior aside like discarded packaging. Next, he launches a fireball meant to roast Zhao Ye. Zhao Ye narrowly avoids the blast and orders everyone inside, believing the building offers at least temporary protection. Even a grazing flame leaves her arm badly burned, and the invader immediately corners her beside the entrance. He notices she risked everything to protect human children, yet Zhao Ye defiantly promises a savior will avenge them. The monster recalls his beloved adopted son slaughtered on Earth, then floods the entire residential tower with roaring fire. Trapped families scream behind doors that will no longer open, while he grabs Zhao Ye before she can intervene. He concludes she cannot possibly understand grief like his and promises to exterminate every living being on Blue Star. Delivery Hero lands one desperate surprise kick against him, but the irritated invader prepares one strike to erase everyone. A colossal burning blade descends across the complex, leaving Zhao Ye unable to guess the boss's true rank. She watches the inferno and accepts that everyone may die when a blue arc suddenly slices through the attack. Qin's power disperses the entire burning blade overhead, and he assures Zhao Ye that her death remains unscheduled. Qin grandly announces that the world-saving protagonist finally arrived, then catches the exhausted woman safely in his arms. Zhao Ye asks who this pajama-clad stranger is, prompting Qin to deliver an unnecessarily theatrical introduction. She only remembers him as the man who failed appraisal, and urgently tells him to flee before reinforcements arrive. Qin realizes desperation prevented her seeing his earlier attack, but leaving now would sacrifice the entire apartment complex. The enraged invader demands his hidden attacker's identity, vowing to torture whoever split the king's mighty strike. Zhao Ye wonders whether Qin somehow caused that damage, but he postpones explanations to extinguish the spreading fire. Qin gathers a vast spiral of air above them, as flames already consume every floor of the complex. The invader boasts that nothing can extinguish his supernatural fire, while Qin answers with one controlled breath. A violent gale tears across the entire burning district, forcing survivors and Zhao Yu to brace themselves, before every trace of the monster's flame simply disappears. Both Zhao Ye and the invader reject the impossible sight. Qin finally admits he broke the wrist and disrupted every spell, then turns away from Zhao Ye to finish the invader. The flame-haired king dismisses Qin's earlier success as a sneak attack before activating a mysterious ability called King's Command. A flaming portal takes shape beneath his raised hand, and countless fiery soldiers pour into the residential complex. The king proudly unveils his supposedly unbeatable Fire Goblin Legion, leaving civilians horrified by the sudden army. Qin recognizes these monsters as stronger than his dream versions, while Zhao Yue identifies an urgent alliance call. She answers dispatch and reports their collapsing situation, learning 3 A-rank saviors are already approaching. Zhao mistakes Qin for a win-class user and suggests retesting, but marching goblins shake the ground before he can respond. Their overwhelming numbers make surviving until reinforcements seem impossible, so the injured Delivery Hero orders everyone behind him. The Fire Goblin Legion descends through waves of flame, yet the B-rank savior vows no monster will pass. Qin respects his courage while the king orders total extermination, giving the Legion 15 minutes to reduce everything to ash. Armed fire goblins surge forward behind their roaring commander, but Qin eliminates the flame-haired king with one explosive strike. Green blood stains his face as he dismisses the royal speech, leaving the suddenly leaderless Legion frozen in disbelief. Every surviving human stares at Qin's effortless victory, and Zhao Yue realizes he killed the boss instantly. The remaining goblins recover and charge Qin together, but he complains that their noise interrupts his resting time. Spears, beasts, and armored warriors flood toward him, prompting Delivery Hero to rush forward despite his injuries. Qin has already witnessed this exact swarm countless dream nights, so he answers with one deliberately ordinary punch. The simple fist releases an incomprehensible wave of power, erasing row after row of charging fire goblins, until a blue explosion consumes the entire invading army. Blue Star Spirit silently observes Qin's terrifying strength, while stunned survivors confirm the Legion vanished on seconds. Qin then flew toward the still open flaming portal, and Zhao Ye urgently asks what he is doing. He explains weeds return unless someone digs out their roots. Qin cheerfully challenges every monster waiting on the opposite planet, while Zhao Yu begs him not to enter alone. The portal closes immediately after swallowing Qin, and Delivery Hero calls the reckless move almost certainly fatal. With the dungeon barrier gone, trapped residents finally escape as emergency crews rush in to rescue every casualty. Firefighters cannot explain how wind extinguished such supernatural flames, when A-rank savior Wu Qinglin arrives to investigate, followed moments later by A-rank savior Xie Wentong. Both find the crisis mysteriously resolved before their arrival and assume the badly wounded delivery hero saved everyone. They praise his solo achievement and astonishing skill, but the exhausted savior quietly denies earning that victory. His colleagues mistake humility for modesty and carry him away, while grateful citizens celebrate him as Yuzhou City's hero. Delivery hero protests that empty praise ruins the mood, yet Zhao Wei remains behind after the dust settles, hoping the unknown man who truly saved them returns. Qin remembers fire goblins as terrifying even in E-rank dreams, because their sheer numbers could massacre an entire city. Some human-looking goblins even committed atrocities against captured women, while their armies methodically destroyed cities across Qin's dreams. Those memories leave no room for mercy now, as Qin surveys the defeated hordes across their burning planet. He finally repays every nightmare with equal violence, tearing through the remaining fire goblins one after another. Blue Star's spirit realizes his strength exceeds mere mental power, while Qin treats planetary extermination like efficient experience farming. The system raises his displayed combat level to 18, already above most X-rank powerhouses she has ever sensed. Accepting her contractor's madness, she activates Planetary Treasure Scan, locating an S-rank weapon somewhere across the dying world. Her guidance points Qin toward the distant treasure, and he welcomes the promised reward with immediate enthusiasm. Elsewhere, Goblin Fire Planet's rulers gather before their throne, where a messenger announces the Fire King's death. Enraged warriors blame Earth for killing their brother, while their ruler dismisses humanity as primitive technological fools. Goblin Star 5 formally declares annihilating war upon Earth, sending the proclamation across the surrounding planetary network. Meanwhile, Qin cuts down the planet's final intelligent survivor, causing its star spirit to collapse with every linked life extinguished. Blue Star's spirit experiences another planet's death for the first time, after ages spent watching her own forms destroyed repeatedly. Qin finds the S-rank Fire King's sword embedded in a throne, but only someone bearing royal authority can pull it free. Qin accepts that inconvenient condition for roughly 1 second, then rips the surrounding throne straight out of the ground. He proudly admires the weapon still attached to its foundation, while the system confirms the sword itself rejects him. Qin keeps the blazing trophy anyway because it looks magnificent, and events return to Yuzhou City 3 hours later. Senior saviors gather for an emergency alliance meeting, where A-rank Yang Yu asks who secretly saved the city. Reports identify a rankless man who failed evaluation, but Wu Yan rejects Qin because he sensed no powerful aura. Xie Wentong asks whether Wu Yan has another explanation, and Wu Qinglin suspects the mysterious X-rank cultivator intervened. That legend can summon storms and erase armies effortlessly, convincing the other A-rank saviors that nobody weaker qualifies. Their greater concern is why Cultivator visited Yuzhou City, since rumors grant him divination and catastrophe-avoiding abilities. Wu Yan fears he foresaw disaster approaching their city, though the others struggle to accept such terrible luck. Yuzhou City barely survived the first dungeon descent, making another crisis feel almost offensively unfair. 4 green light pillars suddenly descend around them, and scanners classify every new dungeon as C-rank. Wu Qinglin activates the Alliance's highest citywide alert, ordering every savior to protect Yuzhou City at any cost. Back at Qin's studio, Zhao dozes beside Jitong until the emergency warning arrives on their phones. The Alliance commands all saviors toward their nearest light pillar, and Zhao anxiously wonders whether an S-rank dungeon appeared. Zhangtong moves to inspect the strange light outside, confirming their own building has been chosen again. Its green C-rank glow initially seems manageable to Zhao, but an approaching formation looks unlike any previous dungeon. An entire armored monster army has descended at once, so Zhangtong goes to wake Qin and secure victory. She discovers Qin missing, leaving the pair seemingly doomed, but Zhao argues his S- rank and her A rank suffice. Zhangtong finds his confidence slightly difficult to share, though Zhao insists justice matters more than their generous salaries. Together, they step outside to confront the Green Invasion, where a wood goblin king mocks only 2 defenders. He orders his wood legion to butcher both humans, prompting Zhao and Zhangtong to activate their combat classes. Zhang's transformed frost magic spreads across the battlefield, while Zhao becomes an armored cavalry warrior behind his shield. Frozen aquatic beasts surge toward the advancing monsters, as Zhao's golden weapons rain down from above. They soon realize the enemy fields a fully armored army, while another dungeon unleashes airborne mechanical soldiers. Wu Yan studies their technology with detached interest, and a water commander orders a devastating flood. The Wood Legion charges with orders to dismember every human, as Alliance mechs raise barriers against incoming attacks. Yuzhou City's strongest saviors enter battle simultaneously, including level 9 Yang Yu, whose injuries increase her strength. Level 8 Xue Wentong joins as an exceptionally agile, elegant swordsman, beside level 8 Wu Qinglin and his basic mecha armor. Wu Yan calmly flicks away his cigarette amid incoming weapons, then raises one hand and orders everything to stop. Gravity freezes every projectile motionless around the S-rank savior, revealing Wu Yan as a level 12 gravity manipulator. His crushing field drives machines and soldiers downward, but the Wood Goblin King quickly understands the ability. Increased gravity makes even raising a gun nearly impossible, yet the Armored King somehow continues moving through it. He simply generates greater force to counter Wu Yan's gravity, then aims a massive cannon directly at the savior. For the first time, Wu Yan's calm expression breaks, and 10 minutes later, even transformed Zhang Tong lies exhausted. Zhao admits this C-rank dungeon is brutally stronger than expected, because Qin made every previous C-rank battle look effortless. The Wood King mocks their weakness using reports from his brothers, while Wu Qinglin barely remains conscious beneath shattered armor. Shui Wentong also approaches collapse despite continuing to fight, and Wu Yan stubbornly keeps smoking on the brink of death. Their commander encourages the saviors to struggle until exhaustion, promising that death will only begin the invasion because his forces intend to slaughter every human on Earth. The Wood Legion receives orders to finish the remaining rebels, and renewed attacks overwhelm the battered saviors, while Zhao desperately calls for his absent captain. A blue spatial blast suddenly scatters the attacking goblins, making the Wood King demand who obstructed him again. Qin returns beside Blue Star's spirit through her planetary passage, then asks whether his wounded assistants fought each other. They remind their joking captain that an invasion surrounds him, and Qin finds the enemy commander's face oddly familiar. The Wood King recognizes his adopted son's and brother's killer, ordering every soldier to tear Qin apart. A level 8 Wood Goblin cavalryman leads the charge, but Qin stops its spear with one fingertip. Annoyed by the noise, he examines the attacker's mount, asking whether the baffled creature happens to be a duck. Even its rider pauses at Qin's deeply confusing question, while level 7 Wood Goblin archers surround him overhead. A storm of arrows streaks toward Qin from every direction, but he casually catches multiple shafts between his fingers. One effortless counter scatters cavalry and archers across the street, leaving the Wood Goblins visibly reconsidering their career choices. Qin scolds them for embarrassing his wounded companions, while the king threatens to smash his skull like the Fire Kings. Qin answers that anyone invading his world must die, so the ruler sends generals Hong and Fan forward. Both are level 10 Wood Goblin generals riding armored beasts, and Zhao warns Qin about their unusually powerful weapons. He admits surviving them alone would take half a day, while Zhang Tong pleads with Qin not to underestimate either. Qin calmly asks whether they are truly that strong, reminding his assistants that he repeatedly ordered them to level up. Then he reclines between the charging generals with absurd relaxation, confusing both attackers just before their combined strike. General Hong chooses speed and attacks Qin first, unleashing violent purple lightning directly above his target. Zhao marvels that the goblin saved such spectacular effects earlier, as a purple explosion engulfs the entire intersection. The impact shakes nearby buildings and terrifies evacuating residents, who rush downstairs before the structure collapses. General Hong assumes no human could survive his attack, but Qin emerges unharmed, calling the power strong yet useless. The goblin's system site reveals Qin's impossible dual-star attributes, and terror immediately replaces his previous confidence. He calls Qin a monster and turns his mount around, but Qin asks whether violence suddenly inspired retreat. Blue-black power propels Qin after the fleeing general, and one overwhelming punch catches him from behind. Qin sends the shattered goblin to report in hell, while the strange power fades as quickly as it appeared. Dark Star's malicious conversion briefly maximized Qin's destructive attributes, though using it leaves him profoundly drained afterward. Blue Star's spirit warns ordinary humans cannot channel such power, but Qin genuinely does not know what he just used. His ignorance surprises even the ancient star spirit, while Qin remains confused about the question itself. She realizes his innate ability erupts unconsciously during battle, as the Wood King notices Qin's suddenly weakened condition. The ruler gathers his surviving army to eliminate Qin immediately, then crushes a glowing green teleportation crystal. A vast formation surrounds the Wood Goblin forces, activating their planetary astral battlefield teleportation array. Goblin soldiers begin dissolving into pillars of green light, while Qin hurls his stolen trophy to prevent escape. The Wood King refuses retreat and instead changes battlefields, pulling Qin into the teleportation before he understands. Zhao and Zhang Tong sprint toward their disappearing captain, but Qin vanishes above them with the enemy army. Zhao reaches upward moments too late, and both assistants fear Qin perished together with the goblins. Blue Star's spirit says this is only planetary-grade conscription, forcing the bewildered pair to ask what that means. Qin must represent Blue Star against another star spirit's civilization, and defeat would leave every earthly life at alien mercy. Zhang realizes Qin's loss would therefore doom the entire world, while another battlefield fills with massive mechanical forces. Bloodied Wu Yan watches them approach without abandoning his cigarette and suspects his path as a savior may end tonight. Then every mechanical attacker suddenly vanishes from Wu Yan's battlefield, leaving the wounded savior alone beneath a peaceful sky. He cannot understand why the entire invasion disappeared and immediately contacts the other battle zones. Yang Yu, Wu Qinglin, and Shui Wentong report identical disappearances, confirming all 4 dungeons ended at the same moment. The Alliance replaces defense with finding whoever resolved every crisis, while a robed observer watches the green pillars fade. This X-rank cultivator had foreseen disaster striking Yuzhou City, yet wonders why the catastrophe vanished without a trace. His new question becomes who secretly saved the city, as Qin awakens upon a barren extraterrestrial battlefield. Qin asks where the teleportation unexpectedly delivered him, and Blue Star's spirit identifies an astral battlefield. Chin asks whether goblin worlds possess star spirits like her and learns they do, though their forms differ greatly. Intelligent alien species and planetary spirits need not resemble humans, reminding Chin that these cosmic wars happened repeatedly. Unfortunately, Blue Star lost far too early last time before approaching enemies interrupt their historical discussion. Several goblin kings arrive and mock their brother's difficult opponent, claiming Earth's weak humans only won through ambushes. One cautious king warns that Chin differs from ordinary humans, while Chin asks how long their family meeting will continue. The older brothers let their youngest challenge him first, but command summoning the goblin god if defeat comes. Their forces deploy swarming bats and soldiers toward Chin, who welcomes mowing down mobs as his favorite activity. A goblin sorcerer promises Earth will regret invading Blue Star, while the brothers begin a huge god-summoning formation. They praise goblin strength and mock humanity's primitive technology, ordering every subordinate to contribute power immediately. A blood-red ritual surrounds the assembled goblin armies, drawing their combined energy toward a central vessel. Summoning once drains the brothers' spirit and vitality, though one still considers their eldest brother overly cautious. Chin interrupts by asking what everyone is doing, and the kings notice their entire deployed army already fallen. Dark silhouettes spiral upward inside the completed ritual, leaving the surviving brothers terrified by Chin's speed. Crimson energy twists into an enormous, descending entity, while Chin admits goblin speech still sounds like nonsense. The manifested warrior immediately swings a divine blade at him, forcing Chin to block an attack that actually draws blood. The system identifies a legendary level 20 goblin god, whose oppressive aura feels strangely familiar to Chin. He notices the deity carries a second powerful sword before another crushing strike drives Chin backward. Blue Star's spirit recognizes intelligent goblins using stellar will, while their kings celebrate the god's supposed invincibility. The goblin god unleashes a planet-enhanced ultimate technique, channeling countless corrupted beasts through its armored body. Savage spirit forms gather around its blazing weapon, and the deity collides with Chin at tremendous speed. Blue Star's spirit confirms this enemy also possesses invincibility, but Chin enjoys fighting someone above his displayed level. His sword strike only inflicts minor pain upon the god, so Chin repays that strike with a direct kick. The goblin god raises an astonishingly strong defense, yet Chin's foot still caves its face sideways. The watching kings wonder whether Earth produced this impossible creature, while the goblin god recovers and attacks again. One tremendous blow sends Chin crashing through the battlefield, but the deity pursues before he can fully recover. Chin answers with another kick aimed at its exposed face, triggering the C-rank Sword of Dark Armor's ability. Shadow Armor instantly envelops the roaring goblin god, making Chin compare it to an awakened warrior. The Thunder Drum of Judgment activates immediately afterward, releasing black lightning through the surrounding battlefield. Finally, the heart-controlling demon bell joins the combination, flooding Chin's senses with violent hallucinations and confusion. 3 stellar treasures activate simultaneously in the god's strongest combo, so Chin retrieves his stolen legendary Fire King's sword. The Goblin Kings cannot believe he controls their royal weapon, as its immense flames engulf Chin's body again. They decide an unmastered legendary sword merely guarantees his death, while the armored god charges with its own blade. Both Chin's planetary passives reactivate at the decisive moment, and his blazing strike collides with the dark weapon. The Goblin god's supposedly divine defense begins cracking under pressure, revealing Chin's dual-star passives as the secret behind invincibility. Chin's sword finally cleaves through the towering deity, and he follows with another merciless downward chop. A red slash tears the Goblin god completely apart, leaving the surviving kings certain their world is finished. The level 20 deity dies and drops 3 stellar treasures, which Chin immediately wonders whether he can equip. Blue Star's spirit says touching them transfers ownership and appearance, so Chin claims the drum and bell without hesitation. Dark living armor then crawls across his body, confirming that the captured equipment truly obeys him. Unfortunately, the fire sword starts burning Chin's remaining clothes, sending him running before censorship becomes the final boss. Blue Star's spirit quietly judges his physical condition surprisingly decent, while Chin studies each stellar treasure's powerful stat bonuses. She explains stellar treasures drop only from specific cosmic monsters, but Chin prefers testing them over understanding classifications. The remaining Goblin Kings ask whether he has more techniques, and Blue Star's spirit suggests they surrender before learning. Chin admits he preferred their earlier arrogant behavior, then raises the heart-controlling demon bell by its handle. Demon sound activates across every surviving Goblin King, driving the rulers into a violent frenzy against each other. Chin notices the same sound causes him no discomfort, because his overwhelming spirit blocks all mental interference. He happily declares the newly acquired treasure genuinely useful, while notifications confirm the maddened kings kill one another. Chin admires the bell after its brutally efficient demonstration, then searches for paths toward the other goblin planets. Since they attacked first, he intends to uproot every threat, and all 5 goblin planets are annihilated that day. Chin eventually returns home wearing only borrowed shorts, then searches his wardrobe before checking on his assistants. The dark studio makes him wonder why nobody turned lights on, until Chin notices several unexpected guests in the room. He scolds his assistants for receiving visitors in darkness, while their frantic eyes warn him something is terribly wrong. The robed stranger admits ordering every light switched off and introduces himself as Cultivator, an X-rank savior. The imposing man descends before Chin with overwhelming ceremonial flair, while Chin quietly repeats the famous codename. His assistants fear Chin's blunt staring may provoke disaster, since ordinary people struggle breathing near an X-rank aura. Chin merely offers Coke or iced tea to his unexpected guest, astonishing everyone by remaining completely unaffected. Cultivator responds with a calm, unreadable smile and chooses plain tea over Chin's additive heavy beverages. Once seated, Chin directly asks what he wants, so Cultivator asks whether Chin resolved tonight's crisis. Chin confirms he already wiped out those goblins, leaving Wu Yan stunned by such effortless honesty. Yang Yu knows those invaders were far from random weaklings, yet Cultivator rewards Chin with an X-rank identification card. The observers recognize status, placing Chin among humanity's highest elites, while Zhao immediately asks about its monthly salary. Everyone pauses at his impeccable sense of priorities, though Chin also wants the answer out of curiosity. The card grants unlimited withdrawals but represents enormous responsibility, because ordinary humans provide every resource their saviors require. Chin happily accepts because saving the world genuinely delights him, then proudly raises his newly obtained X-rank card. Cultivator reminds him that another reward still remains, which Chin admits excitement made him completely forget. The Jade Light tablet can summon Cultivator across 10,000 miles, effectively giving Chin one promise from an X-rank powerhouse. Everyone expects him to treasure such priceless protection, but Chin declines because he sees no practical use. The room cannot believe he refused an X-rank life-saving promise, and Cultivator asks whether Chin is looking down on him. Chin examines the card and repeats that accusation calmly, noting Cultivator's promise failed to save anyone tonight. The devastatingly fair criticism silences every witness, while Chin's assistants find delayed justice embarrassingly satisfying. Cultivator abruptly orders Chin to follow him outside, then shoots through the window and into the night sky. Chin follows under glowing force as Wu Yan requests forgiveness, but Cultivator only intends to teach Chin a lesson. Chin promises an equal lesson against future arrogance, exciting every witness with an exceptionally rare X-rank duel. Zhao and Zhang Tong scramble after them to watch as Cultivator selects a rooftop above the city. He releases Chin from his floating restraint without warning, sending him sliding down the side of a skyscraper. Cultivator says dissatisfaction requires a serious conversation, while Chin promises to go easy on him. Both rise again as Cultivator activates his float skill, then he summons Golden Lightning to punish Chin. Chin recognizes a lightning user and reaches for his own treasure, causing blue and golden bolts to collide above the rooftops. The brilliant aerial duel resembles an extravagant action film, while Zhao wonders whether Chin secretly learned a flying skill. Wu Yan explains that Cultivator's power keeps them airborne, despite possessing only float and thunder talisman skills. Zhao expected actual immortal cultivation behind that codename, and suspects elaborate cosplay explains the rest. Still, Cultivator once cleared a B-rank stellar dungeon alone, then multiplies his talismans into a giant thunder formation. Chin counters using the captured Thunder Drum of Judgment, naming his attack One Slap Shocks Your Mother. The collision floods the night with interwoven blue and golden lightning, forcing Cultivator to take Chin's captured treasure seriously. Golden talismans spiral around Chin inside a sealed formation, as Cultivator completes his brilliant Imperial Thunder formation. Suspended midair, Chin still cannot properly operate his unfamiliar drum, while Cultivator controls both his flight and surrounding thunder. He insists this lesson concerns principles rather than true hostility, explaining that even powerful saviors cannot rescue everyone. Chin challenges that comfortable limitation without hesitation, as Blue Star's spirit silently watches the disagreement deepen. Chin says Cultivator treats salvation like charity owed by the strong, whereas Chin refuses to settle for merely doing his best. He believes saviors must make the impossible outcome happen, an answer Cultivator calls genuinely arrogant. Still, the X-rank man respects Chin's stubborn heroic spirit and asks how he defeated 4 unusually strong C-rank armies. Chin offers to demonstrate the answer directly, inviting Cultivator to unleash the complete formation upon him. Cultivator accepts and warns Chin to prepare himself before Golden Judgment crashes down with city-shaking force. Chin wonders whether such caution is actually necessary, while the formation detonates around him like condensed daylight. Planet Will activates, granting Chin 5 seconds of absolute invincibility, and the thunderstorm explodes across the entire rooftop. From the smoke, Chin admits he never understood this power, while Zhao declares his captain transformed into a god. Zhang's correction makes Zhao rapidly downgrade Big Sister to Young Miss. Then Chin emerges unharmed and asks whether Cultivator understands. Cultivator demands the name of that untouchable defensive skill, but Chin only knows he has apparently always possessed it. That casual answer leaves the X-rank savior genuinely speechless, so Chin ends the duel and proposes drinks on Cultivator. He even carries everyone through the sky in glowing force, while elsewhere the silver-haired woman staggers through an alley in pain. Several suited men close in around the isolated woman, discussing escape money and exploiting her for wealthy customers. Their advertisements scatter across the pavement, revealing a nationwide real-life model trafficking scheme. One captor promises the work ends after their next tourist city, when purple darkness begins coiling around their intended victim. A shadowy presence savors, transforming her into a transcendent, while the next morning finds Yuzhou City unusually peaceful. Residents enjoy ordinary quarrels, traffic, mahjong, and breakfast, and Zhang Tong wishes wishes the warm calm could last forever. Inside the studio, deadlines demand several pages before the platform update, making Chin wonder why drawing hurts worse than monster fighting. Everyone colors panels at desperate professional speed, until Chin announces a decisive move with heroic intensity. Zhao expects some supernatural shortcut directly to the ending, but Chin is merely reciting dialogue while drawing enthusiastically. Their exhausted effort finally produces a successful upload, completing the weekly update before the whole team collapses. Chin then remembers news forgotten during 2 frantic workdays, about a special dreamscape with no fixed appearance or repeat entry. His assistants recognize those rules differ from every known dungeon, and Chin reveals this powerful dream covers an entire city. The scale leaves both assistants shouting in disbelief, while Chin predicts its descent sometime within several days. Zhao assumes Chin can easily defend Yuzhou City again, but the target is actually the tourist metropolis Nanhei City. Chin volunteers to protect it and brings his assistants along, flying toward Nanhei City on a strictly professional vacation. The trio arrives amid picturesque attractions and lavish accommodations, prompting Zhao to question Chin's suddenly luxurious budget. Chin's bank account is empty, but his X-rank card disagrees, immediately transforming the hotel's staff into enthusiastic hosts. The honored guests receive premium treatment upon arrival and settle into a suite larger than practical necessity. The owner provides 3 rooms for priceless X-rank publicity, finally letting an exhausted Chin collapse onto his bed. Unfortunately, the irregular dreamscape still reveals neither form nor schedule, before Blue Star's spirit raises another troubling concern. Chin listens as she identifies a second danger nearby. Someone inside Nana City carries Dark Star's will. Chin wonders whether every chosen vessel must become villainous, but the spirit says darkness does not select only evil people. She cannot pinpoint the vessel among 10 million residents, making the search slightly worse than finding a needle. Then Blue Star's spirit notices an advertisement card featuring the courageous silver-haired woman from Chin's subway ride. The spirit detects Dark Star's trace upon that very card. Although the woman carried nothing sinister during their first meeting, Chin suspects the nearby trafficker who handled the advertisement and instantly crosses the city to intercept him. The unsuspecting criminal barely registers his unexpected guest before Chin crashes through and pins him down. Chin asks whether Dark Star personally chose the frightened man, but the spirit immediately rejects that possibility. Chin instead decides this underling can reveal the entire organization, hauling his unwilling guide back toward its hideout. The criminals gamble comfortably because trafficking apparently pays overtime, and their greedy boss even squeezes money from his own underlings. Chin's entrance finally draws the room's hostile attention, while his captive desperately summons every available brother. The gang charges together beneath their furious leader, only to discover their visitor is inconveniently durable. Chin finds their resistance mildly interesting at best, then dismantles the entire welcoming committee barehanded. The last conscious thug promptly abandons pride and begs, but Blue Star's spirit detects no Dark Star trace among them. Chin forces his captive to reveal the remaining locations, reaching a brothel where the man offers him any woman. Yet the spirit finds no chosen vessel there either, so Chin searches for everyone who could have handled the card. Another clue earns the guide one more painful incentive, and Chin clears the room before continuing onward. He advises the trafficker to choose dignified work if possible, though the battered criminal seems occupied reconsidering every decision. The gang accuses Chin of destroying their entire livelihood. Then another squad rushes forward and meets the same answer. Chin keeps his terrified guide alive for directions, while furious traffickers mourn another severed business route. Their true headquarters occupies a villa halfway up the mountain, where the guide promises Chin access to their finest captives. Trafficked women are sorted by appearance, with the villa holding favorites, and the Dark Star vessel likely touched the card there. Chin hopes the brave subway woman never suffered that transformation, as guards warn that entering the villa means certain death. Their boss is supposedly a formidable B-rank savior, celebrated as Black River Dragon for annihilating Nanha's largest gang. Chin follows his guide up the mountain toward the villa, while the boastful criminal promises his boss will settle everything. Chin immediately smells blood spreading from somewhere ahead, as a muscular guard demands the intruders face him. One glance tells Chin something far worse happened here, and even the guard notices the villa's unnatural silence. His confidence disappears as he asks what happened, while a monstrous shadow shifts beyond the entrance. Chin finds the courtyard carpeted with slaughtered traffickers, whose bodies retain unmistakable traces of Dark Star's power. The terrified guide calls desperately for his boss, while Chin asks whether the Transcendent remains nearby. Blue Star's spirit confirms the vessel is still inside, so Chin rushes forward to meet her immediately. He silently hopes the subway woman is not his opponent before smashing through the villa's upper structure. A surviving man begs for help beneath purple flames, revealing the silver-haired woman as Chin's worst-case answer. The gang boss attacks her while Chin approaches, but she impales him and promises Chin the same death. Chin intercepts the woman's frenzied purple assault, holding his ground as darkness lashes across the room. She rages about betrayal beneath her corrupted power, while Cheon urges her to resist after killing her tormentors. His words pull fragments of buried memory toward the surface, beginning with the mother who abandoned two young sisters. The frightened child once believed their mother would return, and cannot understand why decent people endure such cruelty. Her consciousness fights Darkstar's awakened malice but keeps weakening, and complete defeat will unleash a massacre across Nanhe City. Blue Star's spirit recommends killing her before that happens, yet Cheon recognizes another will speaking through the violence. He intends to save the persecuted woman despite her monstrous corruption, and she insists desperation forced every killing upon her. Her attempt to explain collapses into tortured repetition before Darkstar's malice surges violently through her body. Cheon takes her hand and calmly promises to listen, even as the invading evil seizes control again. She asks whether anyone understands her unbearable life, which began when two sisters were abandoned at 5 and 3. Someone left them outside an orphanage on a snowy night, where simple survival eventually felt like enough happiness. Then a couple offered to adopt only her younger sister, but abandonment made the little girl terrified of leaving again. She clung to her older sister and refused separation, prompting someone to suggest adopting both children together. The couple rejected that inconvenient extra responsibility immediately, leaving both sisters trapped in the same institution. Their refusal also brought harsher treatment from resentful adults, yet enduring it together still gave the older girl happiness. They eventually left the orphanage believing hardship had ended, only for the younger sister to develop leukemia. The older sister vows to fund every necessary treatment, taking exhausting jobs wherever desperate hands are accepted. She survives on 3 or 4 hours of sleep until a delivery customer suggests a more profitable path. She enters the trafficking world and sacrifices her dignity, enduring violent customers while her handler collects the rewards. The money finally covers her sister's treatment despite his exploitation, leaving Cheon to ask why she eventually killed him. Her explanation dissolves into grief as corruption overwhelms her, transforming the wounded woman into a towering dark monstrosity. Cheon meets the eruption with Blue Star's concentrated power, then asks whether her tortured soul can be separated. The spirit says perfect control could dispel darkness without harming her, roughly like shaving silk with a giant cleaver. Cheon still considers awakening her better than execution, reminding Blue Star's spirit of his uncompromising creed. She studies the impossible demand in thoughtful silence, then agrees that every outcome ultimately depends on effort. That foolish determination is precisely why she chose Cheon, so he asks whether she truly wants the woman awakened. The spirit tells him to strike with everything, synchronizing her planetary force around his body. Blue radiance bursts violently through the surrounding darkness, while Cheon channels an unprecedented level of concentrated control. The gathered power compresses into his blazing hand, and he drives it directly into the corrupted vessel. Blue and purple forces collide within a twisting vortex, revealing this unreachable dreamscape was triggered by Cheon himself. Inside it, Cheon makes awakening the woman his absolute priority, and vows to crush any invading pillars of light. A dark duplicate demands the woman be returned, before the corruption mockingly produces several versions of her. Cheon punches through the first approaching shadow, only for 3 purple figures to surround him. Blue Star Spirit asks which one he intends to save, and explains these figures are not mere illusions. Dark Star simultaneously invaded her past, present, and future, a fusion possible only under one terrible condition. Her memories reveal suffering stretching across every stage of life, creating enough accumulated pain to bind all timelines together. Blue Star Spirit wonders how much agony she carried, while the 3 selves prepare to spread it across the world. Cheon orders every version to stop immediately, but their shared resentment demands one reason why. The spirit says separating them allows individual battles, because Darkstar plans more than ordinary planetary invasions. It will fuse each self with destruction-driven invasion monsters, an outcome Cheon naturally assumes makes everything worse. Instead, each fused incarnation becomes an independent individual, reducing one impossible rescue into 3 merely brutal battles. With no time remaining, Cheon chooses his first opponent, as a massive purple pillar descends beyond the city. He targets the war demon formed from her past, watching its monstrous silhouette emerge beneath the beam. The creature dismisses humanity as pitifully tiny prey, then announces its intention to destroy everyone. A blazing sphere gathers inside its dragon-like jaws, but Cheon intercepts the catastrophic blast head-on. Nanhe's defenders recognize the arriving X-rank savior and hope Cheon has come to rescue them. They warn that the beast defeated others with one breath, while it marvels that Cheon blocked its conquering attack. Cheon asks whether the woman's consciousness remains inside and learns she truly fused with this invasion monster. Understanding the assignment, Cheon attacks without further debate, raising a blue stellar shield against another blast. Purple claws hammer down upon his defense, as 2 additional incarnations descend elsewhere simultaneously. Another colossal shadow rises beneath the distant purple light, bringing a different corrupted timeline into Nanhe City. The new creature immediately turns its power against nearby defenders, while conflicting memories argue within its fractured consciousness. One incarnation condemns the world as unforgivably ungrateful, and another carries hatred sharpened by lifelong suffering. Memories of protecting her sister still resist beneath the corruption, but Dark Star twists that devotion into destructive fury. Green-black energy tears vertically through the battlefield as another invasion monster completes its grotesque fusion. A purple maw erupts from the broken city streets, while the war demon unleashes a multicolored counterattack. Cheon answers with concentrated blue stellar power, and distant civilians struggle to understand the chaos. They recognize Cheon leading the battle against the giant monster before a fiery detonation swallows the surrounding block. Terrified residents duck beneath the spreading shockwave, while Cheon admits his hands are becoming extremely full. The war demon proves stronger than earlier invasion creatures, yet Cheon drives directly through its blazing attack. Fortunately, authorities have already evacuated every nearby civilian, as molten destruction reigns between the high-rise buildings. Blue Star's spirit announces Nanhe's local saviors have arrived, so Cheon tries calling Zhang Tong and Zhao Mengju. Their many missed calls reveal both assistants already joined the response, and Cheon spots them racing across the battlefield. Zhang Tong freezes the monster's attack in midair, while Zhao follows with a powerful knightly slash. Their combined assault cuts through the incoming flames, though Zhang knows they barely restrain the creature. Zhao reacts with a technical vocabulary of one sharp curse before Cheon smashes directly into the blazing monster. Its dark wings recoil beneath his sudden strike, while his assistants shelter behind a crystalline defense. Zhang urgently calls Zhao's attention toward the collision as Golden Force launches a figure through the fire. She concludes their chances have become thoroughly doomed, until Cheon intercepts the blast with blue radiance. Zhang joyfully confirms Cheon survived, despite Zhao's gloomy prediction, and Cheon notes that X-rank heroes rarely die so conveniently. Zhang immediately asks her returning boss for assistance, while the war demon condemns humanity's endless slaughter. It releases a swarm of burning subordinate creatures, revealing multiplication as another deeply inconvenient ability. Fireborn monsters pour outward across the ruined district, so Cheon sends both assistants to protect civilians. He personally remains before the towering central beast, whose single eye fixes upon him with murderous focus. Behind Cheon, Zhao organizes the retreating defenders, while fiery projectiles begin surrounding every escape route. Countless smaller demons flood the streets in pursuit, leaving civilians terrified that the horde will catch them. Zhao tells everyone to trust Boss Cheon completely, and Cheon calmly orders them to leave everything behind. Blue Star's spirit watches from her frozen platform as the war demon challenges Cheon's confidence directly. Cheon answers by invoking the power that conquered dragons, then detonates a golden strike through the inferno. Blue stellar energy shields him from the returning flames, finally making the monstrous incarnation hesitate. It answers by pouring another inferno directly onto him, roaring as blue protection splits beneath the pressure. Cheon declares humanity will save itself and defeat the invader, while ordinary rescuers carry the wounded toward safety. He accelerates through the flames for another direct strike, and the city's scattered defenders continue fighting around him. S-rank saviors arrive to reinforce Nanhe's desperate evacuation, giving frightened residents hope from every direction. Zhang Tong calls Zhao over to her position, and he asks what problem requires immediate attention. Swarms of smaller lizard demons surround the exhausted defender, yet Zhang refuses retreat after accepting the alliance's salary. Zhao fears fleeing would cost his comfortable vice-captain position, so they bravely reclassify the monsters as future barbecue. Zhang cautions Zhao against charging without a plan, but his armored cavalry instincts have already won. He launches a blue spear through the aerial swarm, astonishing onlookers with the team's overwhelming strength. Zhang asks nearby saviors to protect civilians and assist, while witnesses celebrate the arrival of A-rank reinforcements. The war demon sweeps a colossal wing toward Cheon, but he announces that his own turn has arrived. The creature cannot comprehend a human matching its power, especially after Cheon withstands its devastating conquering breath. Cheon condemns its desire to erase humanity's world and calls the monster's strength embarrassingly insufficient. Golden energy erupts from his advancing fist, meeting the war demon's claws in violent collision. Their exchange cuts red scars across the battlefield before Cheon closes distance along the creature's body. He catches the monster and unleashes another named punch, convincing it that the battle has reached its end. Cheon's fist crashes squarely into the creature's head, while spectators witness a genuinely world-saving confrontation. Blue force erupts outward from the decisive impact, launching the gigantic war demon helplessly backward. Its corrupted human consciousness surfaces through the shattered armor as Cheon gathers a sphere of purifying stellar energy. He drives the blue attack into the exposed incarnation, tearing darkness away from its startled face. Cheon calls for the trapped woman to awaken, and the defeated incarnation falls like a black meteor. Dark tendrils still cling stubbornly around her soul, so Cheon commands the true consciousness to emerge. His glowing fist strikes through the final obstruction, while he orders Dark Star's obsession to release her. The corruption threatens Cheon with accumulated human pain, but Blue Star's spirit forbids it from touching her host. She confronts the malicious will directly within him, asking Cheon to stand aside while she bears the suffering. Cheon warns that such pain could drive anyone insane, yet the planetary spirit accepts the danger without hesitation. Cheon respectfully follows her decision and stops resisting, allowing red-black memories to invade his consciousness. Blue Star's spirit calls him reckless like the universe itself, as Chin collapses inside the spreading darkness. His body shrinks toward the woman's childhood perspective, until Chin becomes a small version of himself. He relives the snowy abandonment while shielding a younger sibling, and hears their mother explain she can raise only one child. She orders the older child to remain at the orphanage, leaving Chin's child self to ask why she refuses him. A sudden slap replaces any gentle explanation, and their mother simply claims smaller children seem preferable. She threatens to abandon both unless he releases his sister, forcing the older child back into lonely orphanage chores. He still protects his younger sibling whenever possible, but other children punish him for that connection. They target him simply because he is her sibling, until the younger girl finally leaves with adoptive parents. The abandoned child wonders why nobody chose him instead, and jealousy asks why his sister deserved escape. Dark Star amplifies that fleeting thought into monstrous guilt, convincing the child he secretly wanted her dead. Cheon finally understands the woman's true childhood torment, identifying guilt as the source still feeding her pain. The memory isolates her beneath an accusing light, while shame makes her hate even herself. She despises envying the only sister she loves, but Cheon tells her neither blame nor guilt belongs here. Jealousy is among humanity's most ordinary emotions, prompting the wounded consciousness to ask who Cheon is. He says he came to experience and understand her pain, so she challenges him to endure everything she carried. Cheon accepts before her dark presence without hesitation, inviting her to transfer the entire burden onto him. She warns that dying here will be his own choice, then drives red-black anguish straight through his body. Cheon calmly confirms the decision remains entirely his, as her accumulated suffering floods his consciousness. The Crimson Torrent tries to consume him completely, yet the woman discovers Cheon remains perfectly composed. Even Dark Star cannot understand his impossible resilience, while Cheon calls this pain surprisingly manageable. The wounded child can barely believe his answer, so Cheon explains that jealousy never makes her evil. She fears her resentment could have doomed her sister, but Cheon reminds her she was only a child. Beneath every dark thought, she simply craved love, and the tearful woman finally admits that truth. She only wanted the smallest measure of maternal care, rather than the crushing rejection that defined her childhood. Cheon comforts her and urges a return toward reality, while she gratefully accepts his awakening guidance. The child self embraces him before finally letting go, as Dark Star realizes Cheon is helping its vessel escape. Cheon warns the malicious will against causing further trouble, and Blue Star's spirit answers with chilling agreement. Dark Star recognizes that its power is being reclaimed, a duty belonging to Blue Star's planetary will. The defeated Incarnation desperately begs for mercy, but Blue Star's spirit offers no second opportunity. Cheon reminds the woman to keep moving forward through life, and she thanks him sincerely for saving her. Her past incarnation dissolves into peaceful violet light, leaving Cheon with the first rescue completed. He returns to Nana's devastated battlefield at sunset, where Blue Star's spirit warns this was the easiest battle. Present hatred and future despair still await them.